They say some battles never end. Not on the field, not in the body, but in the silence carried home. Some warriors fade into history, others into shadows. But sometimes the shadows walk among us, hidden until a moment of truth pulls them into the light. This is the story of Eden Wolf, a name erased from records, a tattoo that carried the weight of the dead, and a salute that shook an entire base to silence. Stay with me, listen closely, and if her courage speaks to you, don't forget to follow, like, and share your thoughts with us. The clang of steel echoed through the shooting range, sharp against the low hum of drills and shouted commands. Soldiers lined up, boots firm on the ground, their rifles snapping into place with crisp efficiency. Dust hung in the hot afternoon air, heavy with oil and sweat. It was another day at Fort Tannisville, where routine shaped the rhythm of survival. At the far end of the armory, apart from the noise, crouched Eden Wolf. Her presence barely registered at first. Most dismissed her as a civilian contractor, just the woman who kept their rifles from falling apart. She wore olive fatigues, a tank top that clung to her frame, and an old work jacket slipping off one shoulder. Her motions were calm, methodical, every movement precise. She handled a scope like it was an extension of her own breath, adjusting with a steady hand that betrayed no hesitation. That was when the first voice cut across the range. "Tank tops aren't regulations, sweetheart. Cover that up. You're making the real soldiers nervous." The laughter that followed was cruel, sharp, designed to humiliate. A few younger soldiers smirked, watching to see if she would shrink. But Eden didn't flinch. Her jaw stayed locked, her eyes focused on the weapon in her hands. She didn't look at them, didn't answer. She just kept working. And then it happened. As she leaned forward, the jacket slipped further down her arm. A piece of ink came into view. At first, it was only a curve of black, but then the full shape emerged. A skull, an anchor, a trident. The unmistakable emblem of SEAL Team 6. Beneath it, 3 names etched in clean, permanent lines. The laughter died instantly. One by one, soldiers froze, staring at the tattoo. Silence spread like a wave across the range. Everyone knew what that symbol meant. You didn't wear it. You didn't even dare copy it, not unless you had bled under its flag, and certainly not if you were a woman standing alone among 100 men. The one who had mocked her scoffed again, trying to salvage his pride. "What is this? A joke? You think you're special?" His words hung in the air, but no one joined his laughter this time. Because in that moment, something in the atmosphere shifted. Boots sounded against the catwalk above. Heavy, measured. Authority without question. Every head turned upward. And then he appeared. General Marcus Chen. 4 stars on his uniform, his presence enough to silence an entire base. He didn't come down here often, not without reason. Yet now he descended the stairs slowly, his gaze locked on the ink on Eden's shoulder. His face was unreadable, but his stride carried weight, deliberate and unyielding. The mocking soldiers stepped back, uneasy. Even the instructors fell quiet, their voices caught in their throats. This wasn't protocol anymore. This was something none of them understood. Chen reached the range floor, boots striking in rhythm. He didn't blink. He didn't question. He stopped 3 paces from Eden Wolf. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. She stood then, straightening slowly, the rag still in her hand, her expression calm as stone. She met his eyes. Her tattoo was visible now, full and undeniable. The mark of a unit most soldiers only whispered about. And then, in front of everyone, General Marcus Chen raised his hand in salute. Not out of courtesy, not out of rank, but out of something far heavier. Recognition, debt, respect. A ripple tore through the formation. No one had ever seen a general salute first. Not like this. Not to a woman in a tank top holding a rifle rag. The man who mocked her tried again, voice cracking. "What is this? Some kind of theater?" That was when Eden finally spoke. Her voice was low, steady, cold as steel. "Those names," she said, eyes locked on him. "One of them died saving you." The words sliced through the silence. Soldiers shifted, uneasy, caught between disbelief and awe. The mocking man's smirk faltered, his confusion plain. He didn't understand. He couldn't. Not yet. General Keane lowered his salute slowly, his eyes never leaving Eden's. His jaw was tight, his breath controlled, but anyone watching could see it. He knew. He remembered. Something in her presence had reached into his past, pulled forward ghosts he thought long buried. Around them, the base was utterly still. No drills, no chatter, no laughter, only silence. And in that silence, an unspoken truth began to settle. Eden Wolf was not who they thought she was. She had not asked to be seen. She had not demanded respect. But with one slip of fabric, one tattoo revealed, she had changed the air of an entire installation. The mocking soldier swallowed hard, looking away. His words had lost their teeth. The rest of the base soared, caught between fear and reverence, unsure what to make of the woman who stood before them. General Keane's voice came then, low, almost reverent. Permission to stand in your shadow. Gasp broke the stillness. Even the oldest veterans on the field stiffened. This was no longer rumor. This was no longer a mystery. Eden Wolf, whoever she had been, whatever she had endured, was not ordinary. She was something else. A ghost dragged back into daylight, whether she wanted it or not. And every man and woman present understood one thing. This was only the beginning. Long before Eden Wolf became a whisper in a dusty armory, she was nothing more than a name scribbled in the margins of naval paperwork. Flagged, not for failure, but for potential that unsettled command. At 23, she entered Naval Special Warfare preparation, a pipeline few men survived and no woman had ever completed. From the beginning, Eden didn't just keep up, she outpaced. Stronger than most, sharper than nearly all, she carried a kind of stillness under pressure that made instructors uneasy. The system didn't know what to do with her. By protocol, there was no slot, no precedent, no rule book for a candidate like her. Some wanted her gone before the program became a scandal. Others were curious enough to let the crucible test her resolve. That crucible was designed to break the unbreakable. 72 hours with no map, no food, no light, no backup. Only objectives scattered across frozen wilderness. By the second night, temperatures had dropped below zero. Search teams nearly pulled her out when frostbite began to creep across her hands. But by dawn, Eden had already reached her third extraction point. They found her crouched over a makeshift burner, cooking a field rat on tin and coals. When the instructor barked a question, she only looked up once, nodded and said, "Wasn't the worst vacation I've had." It was the first time someone in the back room took her seriously. Not officially, of course. Officially, she wasn't even supposed to exist. Instead, her name slipped quietly into a shadow roster. She became the subject of tests that never appeared in the logs, missions no one admitted sending her on. One of the earliest came on the Syrian border. A contractor unit had gone dark, surrounded by insurgents. Eden was sent in alone. No team, no backup, just a sidearm, a pack, and an encrypted sat phone. 5 days later, she emerged across the wire with 17 people alive, civilians among them, bleeding but breathing. No press release, no medal, just one more classified line in a file marked eyes only. By her 5th year, she was no longer just a ghost candidate. She was designated Ghost 7, part of a prototype unit that lived in the cracks between wars. Soldiers deployed only when diplomacy had collapsed and open conflict would ignite something worse. They were called ghosts, not for flair, but for function. They went where no one acknowledged them, returned with no names attached, and buried their dead deeper than Arlington. Her unit, Ghost Team Delta, was small. 7 members, no real names, only call signs. Eden carried hers with silence. Ghost 7. The others had theirs etched on weapons, scratched into gear, but never spoken aloud during missions. Safer that way, cleaner. Then came Operation Ember Lens. It wasn't supposed to be blood, just a retrieval. Slip in, intercept a rogue CIA asset selling classified arms to a hostile militia on the Afghan-Pakistan border. Extract the package. Disappear. They'd done worse with less, but someone, somewhere in a clean suit thousands of miles away, changed the evacuation point, sent them straight into a kill box. The terrain betrayed them within 20 minutes. Marcus Chen took shrapnel to the lungs, Jacob Reyes was cut down holding the east approach, and Aaron dragged Eden clear of a sniper's sightline, taking the bullet meant for her throat. She killed 14 men in 47 minutes. No rifle. Just a knife in the sidearm she would later hang in her garage out of guilt. She carried Cross's body for more than a mile before the evac team forced her to let go. When she came back stateside, she brought nothing with her but blood matted in her hair and 3 names carved into her bones. The Navy offered her medals, a Distinguished Service Cross, a Silver Star. She refused them all. Her words were ice. Medals are for graves. The living carry the weight. Within 6 days, her resignation was processed. The file was sealed. The team was buried in redacted reports. Eden Wolf disappeared from the system. But she didn't forget. She couldn't. The only proof she had ever served, the only reminder she carried, was the tattoo inked across her shoulder. Skull, anchor, trident. And beneath it, Chen, Reyes, Cross. 3 names, 3 ghosts. In the years that followed, she lived in silence. No one spoke her name. No one asked where she went. She became a shadow that walked among the living, half alive, half buried with the men who never came home. And for 5 years, the world went on without her. Until a morning on Fort Tannisville's range, when a jacket slipped and a tattoo revealed the ghost she had sworn to carry alone. The days at Fort Tannisville bled together with military precision. At sunrise, boots struck gravel, rifles cracked against the air, and orders barked through the dust. But for Eden Wolf, mornings began before the first bugle. She arrived in silence, a metal case in one hand, the other brushing away the fog of memory she never spoke about. No one greeted her. No one asked why she was there. She wasn't on the chain of command, wasn't listed in briefings. To most, she was simply the woman who cleaned guns. Sergeant Travis Rock made sure that description stuck. Tall, sharp-featured, with a smile that curled like a blade, Rock thrived on authority. His men respected him for toughness, for spotting weakness before anyone else could. And from the first week, he marked Eden as weak, or worse, misplaced. "Hey, Wolf," he called one morning, tossing a rag soaked with gun oil onto her bench. "Pretty sure you missed a spot on the latrine door yesterday. Want me to draw you a diagram?" Laughter trickled through the room, low and ugly. Eden didn't look up. She continued sliding a bolt carrier into place, her motions steady, almost clinical. Another soldier added, "Heard she got this gig through some veterans program. Charity slot, you know. Probably married someone who actually served." More laughter. Rock grinned wider, basking in it. Maybe she thinks standing near guns makes her tough by osmosis. The younger soldiers watched him closely, taking cues from his tone. The older ones stayed silent, unwilling to get involved. But Eden said nothing. She didn't flinch. She didn't defend herself. She finished assembling the rifle with a click so smooth it cut through their noise like a blade. What most didn't notice was how she worked. She never checked manuals, never second-guessed, never hesitated. Her hands moved with the confidence of someone who had stripped and rebuilt weapons in darkness, with seconds to live and blood on her hands. Every motion spoke of experience none of them could place. Still, the silence around her became fuel for Rock's game. He thrived on the laughter she refused to acknowledge. Each insult became louder, each test more deliberate. By the 3rd week, he decided to escalate. One mid-morning, Rock strode into the armory with an SR-25 in both hands. The rifle was a wreck, chipped finish, bent scope, sling frayed to threads. He carried it like a gift. "All right, everyone," his voice boomed, casual but calculated. "Let's do a little test today." He dropped the rifle onto Eden's bench with a metallic thud. The room stilled. "Contractor Wolf here thinks she knows her way around weapons. Let's see how she handles this one. Call it continuing education." A few soldiers chuckled nervously. Eden set down the barrel she had been cleaning. She regarded the rifle quietly, eyes scanning its length. Rock folded his arms, smirk tugging his lips. "Take your time, sweetheart. We know thinking isn't your strong suit." Eden reached out. She didn't disassemble the rifle, didn't even clear the chamber. Her fingers traced the upper receiver, the scope mount, the stress lines. She turned it over once, then spoke. Calm, precise. "Gas tubes bent. 3 degrees off center. You fired at least 700 steel-cased rounds, scored the port. Buffer springs overcompressed, scope mounts loose. Stress fractures here. And here, she tapped twice with her fingertip. Your trigger group's full of dust. You chambered during a sandstorm or something equally stupid. And the locking lugs? Her hand brushed the chamber. Micro cracks from heat expansion. This weapon isn't just dirty, it's dying. The room froze. Rock blinked, caught off guard. She hadn't opened it, hadn't measured, but everything she said could be seen if you looked hard enough. He tried to laugh, but it came out thin. Lucky guesses. Eden placed the rifle back on the table, her movements as calm as when she began. Without another word, she turned to her M27 and resumed wiping the chamber. The silence that followed wasn't like before. It wasn't heavy with mockery. It was sharp, unsettled. Soldiers who had laughed earlier now watched her with something else in their eyes. Something colder. Something that whispered doubt. By the end of the week, Rock had grown quieter. Not apologetic, never that, but sharper, restless. Something about her irritated him in ways he couldn't explain. She had passed his test, but worse than that, she had passed it effortlessly. And now his men weren't laughing anymore. They were watching her. Rock hated the shift, hated that she could undermine him without even trying. So he made a decision. Armory eval coming up, he told his unit at roll call. Senior command wants field weapons reviewed live in front of inspectors. Wolf, you're on point. Eden looked up briefly from her bench. Her voice was flat. I wasn't listed on the roster. You are now. Rock didn't smile. This wasn't a joke anymore. He wanted her humiliated, broken in front of everyone. Behind his eyes, he had already prepared the trap. 3 rifles planted among the inspection rows. Each one sabotaged with subtle errors. Loose pins, mismatched buffers, a trigger group assembled backwards, but functional enough to pass a quick eye test. Mistakes designed to make her look incompetent, to expose her as a fraud. When the day came, the inspection bay filled with soldiers. Some came openly hoping to see her fail. Others were simply curious. Rock stood in the back, arms folded, waiting. Eden entered quietly, her jacket tied around her waist, sweat clinging to her skin in the summer heat. She approached the first rifle, calm as ever, and began her inspection. Sight, touch, memory. No theatrics. The silence in the room thickened. Rock's grin faded slowly, replaced with something darker. Because as he watched her move, he realized the danger wasn't that she would fail. The danger was that she might succeed. And if she did, the fault line running through his unit would crack wide open. The armory smelled of metal and oil, a haze of anticipation hanging thicker than the dust. Rows of rifles lined the inspection tables, each one waiting for judgment under the eyes of senior command. The atmosphere was sharp, electric, part ceremony, part trial. Soldiers filled the back rows, some leaning casually against the walls, others tense, arms crossed. They weren't there for the inspection. They were there for her. Eden Wolf walked in without ceremony, a torque wrench in one hand, jacket tied loosely around her waist. She moved with the same quiet precision as always, as if nothing about this day mattered more than any other. But to Sergeant Travis Rock, everything hinged on this. He had built his trap carefully. 3 rifles planted among the rows, each sabotaged with flaws designed to fool any civilian, even most enlisted. Subtle enough to escape notice. Subtle enough to humiliate her. When Eden reached the first weapon, she didn't pause. She glanced, ran her fingers along the surface, and spoke in that calm, unshaken voice. Gas block misaligned. Firing pin overworn. Chambered casing will fail under repeated fire. One of the inspectors frowned, scribbled notes, then quietly nodded. Rock's jaw tightened. The second rifle, Eden lifted it, turned it once. Wrong locking lug. Bolt carriers from a mismatched lot. Will stress fracture after the 5th recoil cycle. The inspector checked the paperwork, his expression hardening. Again, she was right. By the 3rd weapon, the room was silent. Eden's movements were measured, unhurried, her voice cutting, clean through the air. Rock's trap wasn't working. The soldiers who had expected a failure shifted uneasily, watching her with growing unease. And then it happened. As Eden leaned forward over the final carbine, Her tank top clung tight to her shoulder. The heat in the room, the weight of so many eyes, the jacket tied at her waist, it all conspired against her. The fabric slipped lower and the full tattoo came into view. Not just a glimpse, not just a shadow, the whole of it. A skull, trident, anchor. The emblem of SEAL Team 6, inked with a precision only one kind of operator could carry. And beneath it, 3 names etched in small, permanent lettering. Marcus Chen, Jacob Reyes, Aaron Cross. A corporal across the room saw it first. His elbow struck the soldier beside him. That one froze, wide-eyed, then pulled out his phone. He didn't film, not openly, but snapped a single still and uploaded it to the unit's internal channel. No caption, no explanation. 7 minutes later, the image had spread across the base. 10 minutes later, it reached a secured tablet in the hands of General Marcus Chen. When Chen saw it, he stopped mid-step in the corridor. His knuckles whitened around the frame, breath caught in his chest. It wasn't just the emblem, it was the skin around it. Faint scar tissue, the way the lines curved with the muscle of that shoulder. He had seen it before long ago in a dust-choked hospital on foreign soil. The woman who had dragged his men out of an ambush that should have killed them all, Ghost 7. Back in the Armory, the silence had shifted flavor. No longer mockery, not even doubt, something heavier. The air felt charged, like a storm about to break. Soldiers avoided eye contact, whispering in corners, but their eyes kept darting back to her arm. Eden didn't notice. She finished her inspection, her voice steady, as if the world hadn't changed around her. Trigger housing misassembled. We'll fire once, then jam. The inspector looked at her with something between disbelief and awe. Rock, watching from the back, felt something twist in his gut. His plan was collapsing in real time. Worse, it was collapsing in silence. He followed the shifting glances, the way soldiers no longer smirked when she walked past. He saw the whispers ripple through the ranks. "Did you see that ink?" And the private who snapped to attention when Eden brushed past. Something dangerous had taken root, and he couldn't name it. Respect or fear. Maybe both. That night, Rock sat in his quarters, the glow of a laptop screen hard against his face. He pulled clearance codes he hadn't touched in years, digging into a channel buried deep in secure archives. He searched for a unit that wasn't supposed to exist. And there, in the rubble of old classified files, he found it. A single declassified still from a hostage extraction op, years old. Blurry, dust-filled, but unmistakable. A figure at the center, knife in one hand, sidearm drawn, face half turned. The stance was the same, the awareness in the eyes, and on her left arm, a trident tattoo that matched the one burned into his memory. Rock leaned closer, pulse ticking faster. The rumors had been true. There had been whispers of women who served in places where women weren't allowed. Units that operated under no flag, no record. Ghosts. The next morning, Eden walked into the range as usual, her jacket tied at her waist again, tank top soaked in sweat. But no one jeered. No one tossed rags or muttered jokes. The air had changed. Where there had once been laughter, now there was caution. Soldiers moved aside when she passed. Silence followed her, but it was no longer heavy with disdain. It was careful, respectful in its own way. But Rock wasn't finished. His pride had been wounded, his authority shaken, and he wasn't ready to let her slip through his grasp. From the loading bay, he watched her unpack a weapon case, eyes tracking every movement. His voice cut low, sharp. "You hiding something, Wolf?" She didn't answer. "That ink on your shoulder," he pressed. "Looks authentic, maybe a little too authentic. You know, impersonating special warfare is a federal offense. Even if you did serve, if you're wearing something you didn't earn." Eden slid the bolt forward on the rifle in her hands. Her voice was calm without apology. "Then what?" Rock froze. Her stare hit him like a hammer. Not threatening, but unflinching. "You think you scare me with that look?" he muttered, leaning closer. "I've seen operators lie about worse. You walk in here, let us guess, let us fill in the blanks. I didn't let you do that. You chose it." "I didn't let you do anything," Eden replied, voice steady as stone. "You assumed." It was the most she'd spoken in weeks. Rock blinked, unsettled. He leaned in closer, voice low enough for only her to hear. You don't get to stand there with 3 names on your arm and pretend you earned them unless you can prove it. Eden's eyes narrowed, not in anger but in grief. They're not mine to prove, she said. They're mine to remember. The words struck harder than any blow. Rock stepped back, chest tight, unable to find an answer. And in the silence that followed, everyone in the armory realized one thing. The ghosts she carried were real. The confrontation with Rock lingered in the air long after the last word fell silent. Soldiers kept their distance, whispering in corners, but no one laughed anymore. Eden Wolf moved as she always did, quiet, focused, her hands steady as she rebuilt a rifle's trigger group. But something in the way the others looked at her had changed. She was no longer invisible. She was something else, something they couldn't define. Rock, however, refused to yield. The weight of her tattoo burned in his mind, challenging everything he thought he knew about her. He circled closer, his voice low, sharp with suspicion. You think a stare and some ink make you untouchable? You walk around like a mystery, letting us wonder. If you're not proving it, then you're hiding it. And hiding is just another kind of lie. Eden didn't look up. She slid the bolt home with a click that cut through his words. I didn't ask you to wonder, she said. You chose to assume. Her calm unsettled him more than anger would have. He leaned closer, eyes narrowing. You don't get to wear 3 names on your skin and act like you earned them. Not unless you can prove it. This time she paused, her gaze lifted, meeting his head on. There was no threat in her eyes, only sorrow. They're not mine to prove, she said softly. They're mine to remember. Rock staggered back a step as though struck. The words carved deep, leaving silence in their wake. No anger, no challenge, just grief carried like a weight no one else could see. Before he could answer, another voice cut the stillness. Ever wonder, it said, low and steady, why no one's touched her all this time? The words came from the back of the armory. Heads turned. From the shadows between the racks of long-range rifles, a figure emerged. Leo Delgado. Most soldiers barely noticed him in their daily grind. He was quiet, unremarkable, the kind of man who blended into the machinery of the armory. But now he stepped forward with purpose, his eyes fixed on Rock. His sleeves were rolled up, grease smudged along his forearms. So are you talking about it? Rock demanded, his voice sharp. Leo stopped beside Eden's bench. Slowly, deliberately, he unwrapped the band around his forearm and rolled his sleeve higher. The room held its breath. There, etched in faded black, was a tattoo nearly identical to Eden's. A trident, an anchor, a skull. The same seal, worn with time, its lines blurred by years but unmistakable. And across the skull, one extra mark. A vertical hash, an identifier of Overwatch. The role that covered others from the shadows. I was Cross's swim buddy, Leo said quietly. BAU-249. He wrote me before his last deployment. Told me if anything happened, there'd be someone who carried the weight. He said her name once, just once, Eden. The armory went still, Rock's face tightened, confusion flashing to disbelief. You're saying, Leo nodded, his gaze steady. She didn't ask for backup, but some ghosts don't walk alone. Eden's hands stopped moving for the briefest moment. She didn't look at Leo, didn't speak, but her pause was enough to show she felt the weight of his words. Around them, soldiers shifted, their earlier mockery long gone. No one dared speak. No one dared laugh. Because when 2 ghosts stood in daylight, the only respectful thing left was silence. Rock stared at Leo, his voice sharp but weaker now. You've been watching her this whole time? Leo nodded once. Because I knew one day someone wouldn't understand. Someone would press too far, and she might need to be reminded she's not carrying it alone. The room seemed to tilt on its axis. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was reverent. Soldiers who had once jeered now stood straighter, glancing between Eden and Leo with something like awe. The weight of truth was settling, reshaping their world. Eden remained quiet, her hands resuming their work on the trigger group. But every motion seemed slower now, more deliberate. Her silence had always been her shield, but now it felt different and shared. Rock, for once, had nothing to say. He looked between them, the woman he had tried to humiliate, the man who had revealed his own ink, and realized the ground had shifted beneath his feet. He wasn't facing a mystery anymore. He was standing before a legacy. For the rest of the day, the armory was unnaturally quiet. No jokes, no taunts, just the sound of steel, the rhythm of work, and the weight of unspoken respect. By evening, the whispers had already spread. Soldiers muttered about ghosts, about tridents inked where none should exist, about names carried like scars. Some called it impossible. Others swore they had heard rumors before, stories buried in barroom corners, but none of them doubted what they had seen. Eden Wolf was no fraud. She was no charity case. She was something else entirely. And though she never spoke of it, though she never demanded their acknowledgement, one truth had become impossible to deny. Eden Wolf was not walking alone. The morning sky over Fort Tannisville was clean and mercilessly blue, the kind of sky that left no shadows for mistakes to hide in. Soldiers stood in perfect rows across the west field, boots aligned, rifles at their shoulders. The buzz of inspection pulsed like low current through the air. Uniforms pressed sharp, metals gleaming, not a thread out of place. Today mattered. The brass was coming. Everyone knew it. Engines rumbled across the gravel road, and a black armored SUV rolled to a stop at the edge of the field. The doors opened, and silence fell like a curtain. General Marcus Chen stepped out, 4 stars on his shoulder boards, decades of service written in the set of his jaw. His posture crisp despite the years carved into his knees. He wore dress greens, the fabric heavy with metals earned in dust and blood. His face was unreadable, calm before a storm no one else could see. The base commander rushed forward, words tumbling nervously. "Sir, do you need a podium or—" But Chen didn't answer. His eyes scanned the field, steady, searching, and then they landed on her. Eden Wolf. She wasn't in formation. She never was. She stood off to the side near the weapons staging area, dressed as always. Tank top, boots, an old jacket tied at her waist. Ink visible now, full and undeniable, etched across her arm. Chen moved. He cut through rows of soldiers like wind through tall grass. Men and women shifted, parted instinctively, confusion tightening their faces. Protocol was breaking, and no one knew why. The colonel hurried to catch up, voice breaking with uncertainty. "Sir, shouldn't we—" But Chen didn't slow. 10 paces, 5, until he stood directly in front of Eden Wolf. She didn't flinch, didn't salute, didn't move at all. Her eyes were calm, unreadable, as if she had seen this moment long before it arrived. And then General Marcus Chen, the highest-ranking man most of these soldiers would ever stand near, straightened his spine, raised his right hand, and delivered a perfect military salute. Gasps rippled across the field. The colonel froze mid-step. Soldiers blinked, unsure if their eyes had betrayed them. Generals did not salute first, not to contractors, not to civilians, not to anyone outside the chain of command. Yet here he was, arms sharp, fingers tight, eyes locked on hers. Not as a commander to a subordinate, as something else, a soldier to a soldier. Eden blinked once. Her face remained still, carved from stone, but the weight of silence was unbearable. Not one soldier moved. Even the wind seemed to stop, as if the entire base had held its breath. Chen lowered his salute slowly, gravity in every motion. When he spoke, his voice carried without a microphone, reaching every ear in the ranks. Chief Petty Officer Eden Wolf, Ghost 7, first of her kind, last of her team, sole survivor of Operation Ember Lens. The words detonated like ordnance. The formation rippled with shock. Some soldiers gasped aloud, others turned, disbelief etched across their faces. A young SEAL nearly dropped his rifle. Chen's voice didn't falter. "She is the reason I'm still breathing. Kandahar. My unit pinned, no backup, no way out. Then a ghost stepped from the dust. She neutralized 3 hostiles before my men could blink. She dragged one of ours bleeding from the chest, half a click, through mortars. And then she disappeared before we could even thank her." He turned, his voice carrying to all who stood frozen in formation. "I've waited 15 years for the chance to salute her. Today I finally got it." The silence that followed was thick, suffocating. Dozens of soldiers, SEALs, Rangers, officers, all stood at attention, but their eyes no longer fixed on the flagpole. Their focus was locked on Eden Wolf. Slowly, almost reluctantly, Eden lifted her hand, not to salute, but to pull her tank top higher on her shoulder. Enough for everyone to see. The tattoo, full, raw, undeniable. The emblem of SEAL Team 6 etched deep into her flesh, and beneath it, 3 names burned into permanence. Marcus Chen, Jacob Reyes, Aaron Cross, and below them, 4 smaller words. Never forgotten. A rustle swept through the ranks, the kind that happened when hearts shifted in unison. Pride collapsed into shame. Doubt fell into reverence. The myth had become human, and somehow more powerful for it. Rock, standing rigid just beyond the formation, felt his chest tighten. His eyes locked on the tattoo on the west of the 3 names. Aaron Cross, the name carved into his memory long before it ever touched Eden's shoulder. Family, blood. His throat closed, but he said nothing. He couldn't. Keen's voice broke the silence once more. Quieter now, but no less firm. She never asked to be honored. She never will. But that does not change what she is. He faced Eden again, his eyes steady. For the record, Chief, welcome home. Eden didn't reply. She didn't need to. The silence she carried was louder than any medal, any parade. In that moment, every soldier on Fort Tannisville knew they were standing before something rare. Not a contractor, not a ghost story, but a warrior who had never asked to be seen and yet could no longer be ignored. The general stepped back, his salute complete, his duty done. But the echo of that moment lingered. It clung to every man and woman present, reshaping how they saw the world, how they saw her. And though Eden said nothing, her silence was a verdict. She had been remembered, not by choice, but by necessity. The parade field emptied slowly, soldiers dispersing in stunned silence. Conversations that normally filled the air after inspection were absent. No chatter, no laughter, no clatter of boots rushing to the mess hall. Only the echo of what they had witnessed lingered, heavy as smoke. Travis Rock didn't move. He stood behind the staging platform, his body rigid, his thoughts a storm. His eyes had been fixed on the tattoo Eden revealed, the inked names that refused to fade. Marcus Chen, Jacob Reyes, and Aaron Cross. That last name burned into him like fire. Aaron Cross, his cousin, his brother in all but blood, the one who had taught him to climb trees and tie knots when their fathers were absent. The one who had covered him from a drunken rage more than once. The man who told him, one day you'll serve too, but you'd better do it right. When Aaron deployed for the last time, Rock had written him letters, waiting for replies that never came. What the family got instead was silence. A folded flag, a closed casket, and a vague explanation of an operation too sensitive to disclose. Rock had carried that bitterness like lead for years, convinced someone had failed Aaron, let him die without honor. And now, standing in the shadow of Eden Wolf, he knew the truth. Aaron hadn't just died. He had died about saving her. Saving Ghost 7. Rock leaned against the wall of the Armory later that day, his chest tight, eyes closed. He had mocked her, belittled her, tried to humiliate the woman who carried Aaron's last breath etched into her skin. Shame clawed at him, bitter and raw. He didn't notice when Leo Delgado appeared at his side, arms crossed, eyes watching the gravel shift beneath their boots. Leo said nothing at first, just stood in quiet solidarity. Finally, he spoke. You feel it yet? Rock's voice was low, strained. Feel what? The truth, Leo said. When it lands. Rock swallowed hard. I spent weeks treating her like a fraud, like a joke. Leo nodded slowly, eyes steady. And she let you, because that's what ghosts do. The words struck deeper than any reprimand. Rock lowered his head. She never once said his name. Not to me. Not to anyone. She didn't have to, Leo replied softly. She carried it. That evening the sun dipped low, burning the horizon gold. Eden sat alone behind the Armory, sleeves rolled, cleaning a sniper bolt with the same ritual calm she always had. The dying light caught her tattoo, making the inked names glow faintly against her skin. Rock stood at the edge of the gravel, unsure if he had the right to step closer. For once, there was no arrogance in his stride, no smirk tugging at his mouth, only grief. I didn't know, he said finally, his voice breaking the silence. Eden didn't look up. Her hands kept moving, steady, deliberate. I didn't know it was you, Rock continued, his throat tightening. I didn't know you were with him, that you were the one who... His voice cracked. He couldn't finish. Eden's eyes lifted, calm, unreadable. Rock exhaled hard, the words spilling like confession. We buried Aaron with no truth, no closure. I thought, maybe someone screwed up. Maybe someone let him die. I spent years angry at ghosts. Eden's voice came quiet, steady. He didn't save me, she said. He made sure the mission ended the way it had to. Rock shook his head, tears burning at the corners of his eyes. He would have followed you into hell. I know him. That's who he was. He did, Eden replied simply. They stood like that, locked in silence. No anger, no blame, just the echo of loss shared between them. Finally, Rock swallowed hard. I don't deserve to ask this, but if you're going to train anyone here, I want in. Eden studied him, her gaze sharp, measuring. Not as a sergeant, not as the man who had mocked her, but as the boy who once looked up to Aaron Cross. You'll have to start over, she said. I will, Rock replied, nodding. His voice carried no ego, no defiance, only truth. No shortcuts, she added. None, he answered. No ego. Gone. She considered him for a long moment, then extended the sniper bolt toward him, still unfinished. He reached out, his hands trembling as he took it. You'll help build them, she said, before you try to lead them. Her words carried weight beyond steel. Not an offer, not forgiveness, a beginning. Rock looked down at the weapon piece in his hands, then back at her. He felt the shift deep inside him. Not relief, not redemption yet, but the first step toward earning it. Eden turned back to her kit, her silence settling like a final judgment. The lesson wasn't finished. It never would be. But in that moment, Travis Rock finally understood the weight of a name. Not a name on a wall, not a folded flag, but a name carried in the flesh, in the silence, in the legacy of someone who had chosen to live so another could continue. And for the first time, he carried it too. Fort Tannisville did not change in bricks or mortar. The barracks still stood where they had, drills still rang at dawn, boots still struck gravel in rhythm. But beneath the surface, the atmosphere was different. The silence that once mocked Eden Wolf had transformed into something else. Respect, discipline, and a quiet pursuit of something none of them could name but all could feel. Eden never asked for rank again. She never put on a uniform or signed a contract. She didn't need to. Every morning at 04:30 before the first bugle, she unlocked the armory and laid out stripped-down rifles across the benches. No roll call, no orders, no announcements. Just weapons waiting, tools lined in perfect rows, the space set like a promise. At first, only Leo Delgado and Travis Rock showed up. Leo, steady as ever, carrying the shadow of his fallen swim buddy. Rock, humbled, restless, determined to earn back the name he had once mocked. They worked in silence, rebuilding weapons, relearning fundamentals, absorbing Eden's unspoken lessons. But word spread quickly. Curious SEAL recruits began drifting in, drawn not by command, but by whispers of the woman with the ghost tattoo. They came expecting lectures, drills, maybe even punishment. What they found instead was different. Eden didn't bark orders. She didn't punish mistakes with shouting. She corrected once, maybe twice, and somehow the correction stuck deeper than any reprimand. A grip adjusted, a sight realigned, a trigger squeezed with patience instead of force. Her silence taught more than volume ever could. By the second month, Rock began leading warm-ups. His voice was calmer now, sharper in a different way. He treated every bolt assembly like a test of restraint, every drill like a tribute. Eden never said she trusted him, but one morning she handed him her own rifle for cleaning. Rock understood what that meant. On the 10th Friday, General Marcus Chen returned. Not with an entourage, not in dress greens. He came alone, standing at the edge of the training field, watching in silence. Eden corrected a recruit's stance. Leo adjusted a scope. Rock guided younger soldiers through the feel of a trigger before the break. For nearly an hour, Chen said nothing, only observed. When the session ended, he approached Eden. "You rebuilt them," he said quietly. She nodded once. "They rebuilt themselves." He studied her a long moment, then spoke softly. "Come back. Not to the roster. To the mission." Eden met his eyes, unflinching. "I never left." But soon after, things shifted again. One morning, Rock arrived at 0430 as always, but the doors to the armory were already open. The benches were laid out, gear arranged with surgical precision, just like Eden always did. But she wasn't there. Neither was her rifle. He said nothing, picked up the first weapon, and began warm-ups alone. 10 minutes later, Leo joined him. By the third day, whispers spread across the base. "She's gone." Command reassigned her. Black Ops pulled her back into the dark. She was never here at all. But on the fourth morning, Rock found something on her bench. A small olive-green duffel folded neatly beneath a canvas cloth. A note rested on top, 4 words scrawled in uneven handwriting. "Pass it the right way." Inside the bag lay her tools, a bolt carrier she had rebuilt 17 times, a sidearm no longer regulation but polished to perfection, and at the bottom a photograph, 7 figures in dusty uniforms. No names written, only call signs. One woman at the center, face half-turned, unmistakably Eden. Taped behind the photo was a single Overwatch coin. Leo held it between his fingers like a relic. His voice was quiet. "She's not coming back." Rock said nothing, his hands wrapped tight around the canvas strap. His chest felt heavy, but not with grief this time. Something else. Legacy. She hadn't abandoned them. She had simply stepped back into the shadows, leaving them to carry the weight. Weeks passed. The sun still rose over Fort Tannisville. Reveille still sounded. Formation still stood. But a new rhythm beat within the base, one that wasn't written in manuals. Soldiers began calling it Ghost Hour. At 0430, the benches would be laid out, weapons stripped and waiting. Sometimes 10 recruits showed, sometimes only 2. Some mornings it was silent but for the click of steel. Other mornings it was a class, a ritual, a pursuit of discipline beyond orders. And the rule of Ghost Hour was always the same. No shouting, no shortcuts, no ego, just precision, just respect. Recruits who stayed long enough began to ask questions. Who was she really? Did she fight? Was the tattoo real? Rock always gave the same answer. She never wanted you to know. She just wanted you to be ready. One afternoon, a new group of trainees arrived. Among them was a young female corporal with eyes too sharp for her age. After the tour, she lingered at the edge of the benches, staring at the Overwatch coin nailed into the wood. "My brother had one of those," she said quietly. "Said it belonged to someone who saved his unit once." Rock nodded. "Then you're already in the right place." That evening, under a fading sky, Rock walked to the far edge of the compound. A stone wall stood there, peppered with old unit patches and tributes left behind over the years. From his pocket, he pulled something wrapped in cloth, her name tag. He fixed it to the wall with a single bolt she used to carry in her kit. Beneath it, with a black marker, he wrote 2 words, "Still watching." Because Eden Wolf hadn't disappeared. She had become something more, a presence in the way rifles were cleaned with reverence, a memory in the hands that learned to fix before they fired, a silence that spoke louder than any order. And at Fort Tannisville, the legacy remained. Every morning at 0430, every Ghost Hour, Eden Wolf never asked to be remembered. She simply made sure no one else was forgotten. Some warriors fight their battles in daylight, their names etched in marble, their medals polished by history. Others live in the silence between shadows, shaping generations without ever stepping into the light. Eden Wolf belonged to the latter, a ghost, a teacher, a legacy. If her story spoke to you, if her silence echoed louder than words, share your thoughts, leave a comment, and remember the quiet ones who carry us. Don't forget to follow and like so her name and theirs never fades.